Hello, everyone, and welcome back to American Ultras Talk. It's that time of the week again. I am here, unfortunately, by myself yet again. We promise we'll try to get Yuri in one of these videos at some point, hopefully soon. But I'm here by myself for the weekly USMNT Stock Watch, where we go over the players who impressed or maybe disappointed over the past week of games of football, and just give 3 players each for stock up for the USMNT perspective, 3 players for stock down, as well as at the end of the video, an Academy Player of the Week from the past week, and then a player to watch for this coming week, a sleeper pick to watch for this coming week, and a new addition to this week's episode, a game of the week to watch that has Americans on both sides, so one that you're not going to want to miss out on. So stay tuned to the end of the video for all that fun stuff. But without further ado, let's get into the first stock up. And I mean, you see the jerseys behind me. This could basically be the first stock up for every stock watch of the season. And honestly, it might have been already. I honestly couldn't tell you, but he seems to be featured every week. It's Christian Pulisic. To be completely honest, I didn't want to have him in this week because he has been in last week. He's been in stock up a lot. And with 3 players in here, it's a very limited space to shout out players who played well. And there was a lot this past weekend, but I just couldn't pass up on putting him here after the week that he just had, scoring in the Champions League against Liverpool. Despite the 3-1 loss, he played very well, scored a great goal. And then, of course, in the Milan derby over the past weekend, the most important game of the season for AC Milan, he scores a goal. They win on the road, even though, of course, we know Inter and AC both play at the San Siro. It was still the away game in the Milan derby. Pulisic opens the scoring just like he did against Liverpool, but this time Milan actually get the win. Huge week for Milan, 1 positive, 1 negative result, but for Pulisic, it was all positives. 2 goals against 2 of the biggest and best teams in the world has to warrant a stock up. I mean, he's beating the one allegation that had been said against him from this past season, from the last season, that he didn't really show up against the biggest of teams, especially in the Champions League. Well, these are probably 2 of the biggest teams he'll play all season, and he shows up with goals against both of them. 4 goals and 2 assists on the season already in 6 games, a goal contribution per match. It's absolutely incredible what he's doing, and hopefully he can just keep it up, because as impressive as last season was, if he keeps up this pace, he could even break what he did last season and continue to have his best season in Europe in his entire career. So hopefully he stays on pace for that. Now, on a more negative note, it's actually a bit of a funny one, because for my first stock down, I'm going to pick his teammate, Musah. I didn't have Musah as a stock down after the last USMNT camp, and perhaps I should have, and I think that's part of the reason I'm picking him for today. I think he was one of the worst players in that camp, absolutely hurt his stock from a USMNT perspective. And then from an AC Milan perspective, he just really hasn't been trusted with a lot of minutes recently. In these 2 games this past week, which, like we said, are so important for Milan's season. Their first Champions League game against Liverpool, of course, at home, and then, of course, the Milan derby against Inter. He didn't play a single minute in either of those games, only played 16 minutes the past weekend as well against Venezia in the 4-0 win. It just kind of shows that he's falling down the pecking order in the midfield depth chart, and it's a little bit of a concern, because to be completely honest, when he first made the move last summer, both me and Yuri said that he's probably not ready for the level. It was a bit too much of a step up. Last season, he got decent minutes, but really the production wasn't there. He started off the season this year with an assist against Torino in the first game of the season of Serie A, and it looks like maybe this could be the year where he gets more minutes, he finally gets more production. But since then, there's been rarely any minutes, and of course the bad USMNT camp as well. So unfortunately, it does have to be a stock down for Musah, and hopefully he can get some minutes soon. And if it stays this way, maybe he should even look for a loan move in January. Who knows? Now, on to the next stock up, and we're actually going to be sticking in the Serie A and sticking in the midfield, because a player who's had a bit of a rough summer, as it always seems to go for this guy, Weston McKennie is going to get a stock up. He seems to be inevitable for Juventus, always finds his way back in the starting lineup, and it was no exception this past week. They, of course, had their first Champions League match as well against PSV and, of course, the American boys. There, Malik Tillman started the game, Richie Ledesma started the game, Pepe coming off the bench, Michael Bresser as well, the 07 on the bench for PSV, which is something notable to keep an eye on. The Dutch-American Netherlands Youth International. He's one to watch for the future. But, of course, McKennie getting his first start of the season in that game out of nowhere against all odds. And what does he do? He goes on and scores his first goal of the season, and actually his first goal in a really long time, because he didn't score a single goal for Juventus last season. And, of course, we know he didn't score as a Leeds player in the second half of the season before that. So his first club goal in about a year and a half, and it couldn't have come at a better time in his first start in a huge game against in the Champions League, and of course in the game of the week from this past week, because it was against so many other Americans. Weah, of course, playing for Juventus as well, getting off the bench. We had 5 Americans feature in that game, which is just absolutely incredible. Stock up for all of the Americans abroad, to be honest, because 5 Americans seeing the pitch in the same Champions League game is so unprecedented. But back to McKennie, the good news did not stop there for him this past weekend. Of course, they had a game against Napoli, a very big game against a team that was previously top of the Serie A, started the season on fire, and McKennie did enough in the game against PSV, the goal and his performance as a whole, to continue to keep his starting spot against Napoli. It just seems to happen every season. He fights his way back into the lineup after supposedly not being in the plans, and he's there to stay. Now, his performance against Napoli wasn't anything to write home about necessarily, but I think it's definitely a stock up because, of course, the goal in the Champions League and 2 starts in a row against all the odds. So happy for Weston McKennie, and hopefully he can continue to keep his starting spot for the majority of the season. Now, on to a more negative note again, on to the second stock down. And this one is unfortunate for many levels because it's going to be Diego Kochen, and he's going to get a stock down not due to his performances or anything like that. He's going to get a stock down because he just picked up an injury. Reports are saying Kochen will be out for about a month, which is very unfortunate for him, mainly because of the timing. I mean, he just got his first USMNT call-up, and the next camp is in October. It's Pochettino's first camp. We don't know whether Poch would have called him up, but it does look like he'll be injured for the camp, and even maybe a little bit after that as well. So just a missed opportunity there for Kochen to get into a U.S. camp under Pochettino, his first camp as manager, and impress him as probably our goalkeeper of the future, as we all know. But also it's a little bit unfortunate because of the timing for Barcelona, because of course anyone who's been paying attention would know that Marc-Andre ter Stegen, the Barca goalkeeper for so long now, just suffered a very serious injury over the weekend that will probably have him out for the whole season. Speedy recovery to him. Hopefully all is going well with ter Stegen. There was some social media backlash for his recent performances, but hopefully he's back soon and makes a speedy recovery for next season. But from Kochen's perspective, this could have been an opportunity for him to maybe even fight for the starting spot. I don't think he's personally ready for that, but we know Barca have a serious history, especially in the past couple of seasons, with playing the youth and trusting the youth players, their young academy prospects. And we know that there's been so many reports that have said that Kochen is their goalkeeper of the future. Maybe he would have gotten a game or two. But from the alternative perspective, the ter Stegen injury is also a stock down for Kochen because, as we saw last season, when Kochen was basically the third goalkeeper for Barcelona, he was always on the bench for their match days, never played, which also led to him not playing for Barca B. As we saw then, Barca like to carry 3 goalkeepers in their match day squads. With ter Stegen out, Kochen could be promoted up, well, promotion in quotes, because I don't actually think this would be a good thing for him, promoted up back to the Barca first team bench to sit there with Astralaga, who's their current third string keeper, behind, of course, Iñaki Peña, who will be the new starter with ter Stegen out. And this could mean, if this is the case once he's back from his injury, that he misses out on starting crucial games for Barca B, Barca Athletic, their second team, which would be a huge negative for his development because this is his first professional season where he's playing week in, week out in the professional football. Yes, it's not the highest of levels, but he already had a full season last year sitting on the bench for Barca's first team. This season, I want to be solely focused on getting game time, and this ter Stegen injury could potentially jeopardize that. So it's going to have to be a stock down for multiple reasons for Diego Kochen. But onto a more positive note, and for the final stock up, it was hard to pick just 3 this week. I think there was so many good performances, a lot of goal contributions. I'll give a quick shout out to Gianluca Busio, had a man of the match performance. He definitely deserves a shout here. I would have picked him, but I picked him last week, so got to mix it up a little bit. Jordan Pifak got his first Bundesliga goal contribution of the season, getting an assist. Brendan Aronson also got an assist. Fuller and Balogun got a goal. But the player who I'm going to pick is going to be Malik Tillman. I think that Tillman was probably one of the only somewhat threatening PSV players in that Champions League game that I mentioned previously against Juventus. Of course, I mentioned that because we were talking about McKennie. Tillman in that game, I don't think he was necessarily great, but he did threaten at times, created a couple of chances, which was nice to see. Very accurate with his passes as well, which is always a positive for a winger. And then in this past weekend against Fortuna Sittard, he played one of the best games I've ever seen him play. 2 great goals, including one of them off, for the first time in his career, a direct free kick. Absolute beauty into the top left corner. What a goal for Tillman. That was his brace, his second goal. His first one was off a corner. He got the rebound. I think it was a corner, but he got the rebound, smashed it in. 2-goal performance from him, man of the match, just absolutely sensational. And the way things are going for Malik Tillman, already 3 goals and 2 assists this season in all competitions. I honestly think if he keeps it up, especially considering how good he was last season, he could be in for a very high-profile move this summer. We know how many good players PSV have produced, especially in their recent history, that have gone on to play in some of the top leagues in the world, specifically the Premier League, La Liga, and I think Tillman could potentially be the next of those. Maybe he goes back to the Bundesliga because we know he's German-American, came from Bayern Munich's academy. I mean, they do have a buyback clause in him, so maybe they decide to exercise that, especially with Thomas Muller now a little bit in the twilight of his career on the decline. But I do think that this will be Tillman's last season at PSV if he keeps it up, and I have faith that he will because he's been absolutely balling this season. But on a more negative note, for the last stock down of the week, I'm going to have to actually pick, for the second time in this video, I'm picking teammates, one for stock up, one for stock down. And for this one, it's going to be Malik Tillman's PSV teammate, Richie Ledesma, and it's for a couple aspects as well. I'm going to go back to this game, the Champions League game against Juventus for PSV. He did start this game, so complete props to him. He deserved it. He was in Eredivisie Team of the Month for the first month of the season due to some solid performances against lower-level teams in the Eredivisie, but nonetheless made it, got the confidence to get the start against Juventus, but he was just completely outclassed. I mean, for the first Juventus goal in particular, Kenan Yildiz, the Turkish wonder kid, obviously he's a great player, great talent, but he just beat Ledesma so quickly. It seemed like Ledesma committed to the overlap on that, which was absolutely the wrong option, allowed Yildiz to create some space for himself and score a beautiful goal, it has to be said. But I think Ledesma it just proved this game that he's out of his depth at this level. And unfortunately, I've been saying it, I've been wanting to be wrong, but for this whole season, I've had a lot of doubts on how good Ledesma could be out of position at right back against the highest level of opponents because, like I said, the teams that PSV played to start the Eredivisie campaign were not the strongest. They were relegation battling teams, and now Ledesma against very high-level opposition. Juventus are very strong this season. They look like they could be challenging even for the Scudetto early on in the year, and I think Ledesma was just completely outclassed, unfortunately. It showed a bit of his level and showed why probably he won't be getting a USMNT call-up unless he really works on his game and perfects the right back position. Not only that, he actually also picked up a small knock. Nothing too major like coach, and I think he will be back next week, but he did miss this past week for PSV, the game against Fortuna Sittard that I mentioned that Malik Tillman scored a brace in, and it's just interesting because now we don't really know whether Ledesma is going to keep his starting spot. Morrow Jr. started in place of him, but of course they have the new signing Rick Karsdorp, who came off the bench. He's finally match fit for PSV. I'm expecting he will be starting for them from now on. So unfortunately, as nice of a story as it has been, it looks like Richie Ledesma has finally lost his starting spot for PSV, and minutes will unfortunately be coming a little bit more sparingly for the rest of the season. But hopefully he can continue to impress PSV and get at least a little bit more minutes, because when he came back last season, I don't even know if he played. He played in one game in the entire second half of last season for PSV. So it's already an improvement on that. So hopefully he can continue to get some sub minutes off the bench, play in a couple rotation games here and there, but just not a good sign for Ledesma, unfortunately. Now, on to the fun stuff, and we'll start with Academy Player of the Week, and our decision to decide to record this a little bit later, one day later, because, of course, we did have a video that came out on Sunday talking about why the USMNT are losing dual nationals recently. Go check that out if you haven't. It's a very good video. Yuri was in it as well, so always a positive when both of us are in the videos. But we decided to wait and upload this on a Tuesday, record on Monday because of that, have a day in between, and it helped this player's case. I'm going to be picking Kevin Sullivan for Academy Player of the Week, and honestly, it might be cheating because at this point he may have progressed past the Academy levels, but he's still a U.S. youth national team player. He's still only 14, although he will be turning 15 soon. It's incredible how young he is, and he gets Academy Player of the Week because the Philadelphia Union first team this week had 2 games, one midweek against NYCFC and one this past weekend against DC United. Won those games by an aggregate score of 9-1, so stock up for the Union first team and for me as a Union fan. But Kevin Sullivan, due to the results in those games, got to make a cameo off the bench late in the game, got about 5 minutes or so in both of them, which is notable because not only is it his second and third MLS appearances, it's also the first time in his career that he's played in back-to-back matches for the first team. So hopefully it's an indication of more to come. And I have to say, he looked very bright in his limited minutes in both of the games. Against NYCFC, he had one very nice moment where he got the ball turned and accelerated perfectly, so much so that he drew a yellow card, which I thought was very impressive, especially going against a defender who was 11 years older than him. Beating him for pace, I think, was no small feat. So a huge moment for him in that game and in the win against DC United as well. He was set up by Quinn Sullivan, his brother, of course, who actually could have been picked for stock up this week, had an incredible game, 2 assists in that match against DC, but he set up Kevin towards the end of the game in stoppage time, and he had a shot that was just tipped over the bar by the keeper. So 2 moments in just about 10 minutes of MLS game time that were really encouraging for Kevin Sullivan. And not only that, he also just got man of the match. The reason why I mentioned the fact that we were recording this a day late, he just played for Union's second team this Monday, yesterday, as the video comes out, and he got man of the match, got a beautiful assist off a perfectly placed free kick to his teammate Frankie Westfield, one of the most underrated USMNT prospects at the fullback position, by the way. So go check out his tape if you haven't already. His highlights are very impressive. But perfectly placed free kick assist for Kevin, and all around he just ran the show. I thought it was his best game for the Union second team, and it's coming at the perfect time. Playoffs are about to hit for both of them. I expect he'll be more with the second team and probably not used in the playoffs in MLS. But next season, it's looking very encouraging that Kevin could be getting significant first team minutes. So keep an eye out for that as we get to the second half of the regular season and the start of the new MLS season. But now moving on to the players to watch for this coming week, and I'll start with the mainstream player, and it's a player who I mentioned could have had a shout for stock up this past weekend. It's going to be Folarin Balogun. I thought he came on against Barcelona in the Champions League off the bench. It was a little bit disappointing to not see him start that game, but I thought he did make a solid impact off the bench in his 20 minutes or so, was very dangerous, posed some attacking threat, and was rewarded with a start against Le Havre midweek because of it, and he got his first goal of the season. Super happy for Balogun. We know it hasn't exactly been smooth sailing in his career with Monaco, especially last season and to start this year as well. He's missed a lot of big chances and hasn't played as much minutes as I think we would have hoped, and probably he would have hoped as well. But this is a very encouraging start. 2 solid performances in the week, including his first goal, and hopefully I picked him to stock up because I'm hoping he starts against Montpellier at home this next weekend, and I'm really hoping he can get another goal, get on the score sheet again for back-to-back games, and really kickstart a season that hopefully, fingers crossed, can be better than his debut season for Monaco, because let's face it, it was a little bit underwhelming. But we know he has the ability. We saw it in Copa America over the summer. Hoping that Balogun can have a good start and push on from this goal. Hopefully it'll help him continue his performances on for the rest of the season, and hopefully he locks up a starting spot as well for Monaco. Lots of hoping there for Folarin Balogun, and that theme is going to continue here. And another Ligue 1 player in my sleeper pick, it's going to be Tanner Tessman, Yuri's boy. It's Venezia former vice captain that he's been so high on for so long now. He, of course, made the move to Lyon over this past summer, and I'm picking him as a player to watch because Lyon do start their Europa League campaign this week, and Tessman hasn't exactly gotten too many minutes since he made the move. He's still adjusting to the new system, of course, the new team, the new league, but he's looked all right in the few minutes that he has got, and with 2 games this week, it's the perfect opportunity for him to get a start in one of them. If I had to guess, I would hope at least that he starts against Olympiacos at home on Thursday in their first Europa League game of the season, and if he does well, maybe he even starts against Toulouse and, of course, Mark McKenzie, USMNT center back, a little bit of a USMNT derby there of players on the rise on Sunday. So I'm hoping he can start one of those 2 games and maybe even get significant minutes in the other. I'm convinced that as soon as Tessmann gets a run of games, he's going to cement himself in the starting lineup for Lyon, especially over an aging Nemanja Matic. We know he has the quality. We saw it in the Olympics. Everyone who watched Serie B and Venezia last season saw it. Of course, me and Yuri being the main culprits of that, but I'm really hoping that Tessmann gets a good run of minutes because, we know he can impress if he does get the opportunity. And now for the final part of this video, it's the game of the week, a new addition to the segment that I think a lot of people have been asking for in the comments. I thought it was a solid idea, especially since we have so many Americans abroad now that there always seems to be at least one marquee matchup, especially between Americans. And one that I'm picking here, I mentioned Tessmann versus McKennie that could potentially happen in Liga, but I'm going to mention one from England, from the EFL Championship, Leeds versus Coventry, Brendan Aronson versus Haji Wright. Brendan started the season off pretty well with a couple goals and an assist as well. It's been so nice to see his renaissance at Leeds after, we know, the shaky start in the Premier League 2 seasons ago and then the controversial loan move last season to Union Berlin. But he's back and better than ever for Leeds. Hopefully he can sustain this performance, and especially against Coventry, who are a very solid team, as we know. And Haji Wright, I think, is one in the top 5 for progressive carries in the championship this season. I'm guessing at least one of them, will get a goal contribution in this game. I'm putting my neck on the line and predicting that, and hopefully it'll be an entertaining game because these are 2 of the teams in the championship that should be fighting for promotion, at the very least for promotion playoffs, and it's so nice to see an American at the heart of what both these teams are doing. So stay tuned for that. But with all that done, that's going to do it for today's Stock Watch. As always, let me know in the comments, what players would you have picked for stock up that I didn't mention? What players would you have picked for stock down that I didn't mention? Because for all the positives we had this past weekend, there's probably 1 or 2 other negatives that I think also deserve to be mentioned. So if you have any of those in the comments, definitely drop those down below. I'll be replying to as many as I can. I'll always love interacting with you guys and your opinions. And of course, let me know as well, what do you think of the Academy Player of the Week? Do you have any other shouts for that? What players are you excited to watch in their respective games this coming week? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll see you next time.